Welcome back, everyone. Today we will be fitting the Acerbis X-Factor handguards and the Tusk T-10 aluminum handlebar to my 2020 CRF250L. So keep watching if you want to figure out how to do all this. I have broken it into segments so you can see the chapters at the bottom of the screen there. And if you came for just the handguards or came for just the handlebar, you can use those to find your way through the video. So I hope you will enjoy the video, and let's get to work. So if you look in the background there, you'll see my CRF250L. This is the 2020 model, right there. And the stock handlebars, while, undamaged, I figure it's better just to upgrade to the aluminum ones because they're a lot stronger. And, I feel more comfortable with something that's more like this than the stock ones, which will pretty much bend in half the first time you crash off-road. And then these X-Factor handguards they're the ones that I chose, and they come with this style of center clamp, and I seriously hate this style. Yes, they do work, but they are not ideal, and I'll get into that later in the video. So I have purchased these. These are Zeta brand clamps, and I like these because it has two axes of rotation. It can rotate around the handlebar, but can also rotate this way. And that will allow it to actually be properly aligned. Now, the length of these is a little bit different. You can see if I center these up, this one is quite a bit longer than that one by about 25 millimeters, but that's okay. That's not a problem because I can always cut this down if I need to, for one. And two, I've already tested these handguards on this bar, and they do not have much movement inwards from the stock length, but they have plenty of movement outwards. So these will work just fine as is, but if I need to shorten them, I can. Also, one more thing before I forget to change the set. I have also decided to pick up a second set of the OEM hand grips because I want to be able to have this thing be completely reversible. So I'm not going to be cutting off anything from the originals. I'm going to keep those intact because the bike is still, brand new. So these are, the made in Thailand, fresh factory from Honda, and these are very, very cheap. That's the other reason. These are dirt cheap, and they're relatively rugged. Now, something that we're going to have to do is drill a hole in the new handlebars to accept this pin. You do have two options. You can either drill or grind off this pin and then not drill your handlebar, which will technically leave it stronger, or you can drill a small hole for this and leave this stock, and that way it won't rotate around quite as easily. I'm going to choose to drill the handlebars. So looking at these here, remember I went with these Zeta dual pivot clamps rather than the stock single pivot clamps that come with the Acerbis X-Factor handguards. I'll show you once I have them on why I don't like this style, but it should be pretty obvious that this gives you much more freedom in where to place the handguard, and that you'll get a much more square clamp on the braces or on the bars. You're going to hear me say these words a lot during this procedure, is be mindful. Be mindful of where everything goes and how everything is installed, because you really don't have any second chances when it comes to, if you forget how it goes, you will either have to review your manual or, do a deep dive on the internet on how to repair the thing that you just messed up a little bit. But I will say nothing here is irreversible as long as you don't break anything. So the next order of business here is to get the throttle tube here disconnected and off the bike. That might be easier with the brake assembly off. And now that comes off. So here's the stock handlebar. Let's go over to the bench and do some measurements. So here you can see the stock bar next to the new one. This new bar, if I didn't mention it earlier, is a CR high bend, and it matches the stock bend almost perfectly. So the things we're going to need to measure are where the two holes are, and something that is more of just something to put a marker on is you see that punch mark there? That is where the controls need to line up with. So what I'm going to do is just use some calipers, 6-inch rule, whatever I need to figure out where those are and mark them on the new bar. So the pin marks are here and there. They are 200 millimeters from the edge of the bar inward, and the one on the clutch side is pointing straight up when the bar is sitting like this, and the other one over here is kind of pointing a little bit towards the rider by just a few degrees. This one, which again is on the clutch side, this is for the high beam, low beam, and flashers. This one is in a different place than the one on the other side, so you do have to mark and drill these individually. Now this one is going to be harder to measure because because I don't want to remove this grip, I can't get an exact measurement on where it's going to end up. But I can get close enough that it isn't really going to matter too much. Here is a clever way to figure out where this point is in space. When I stick my Mitutoyo 6-inch rule into the spare one, you can see it is almost, I'd call that 119, 120 millimeters. So I know that this point on there is 119 millimeters, so all I have to do is add to that. So all you have to do is line up your 6-inch scale on there, and it looks like it is 33. So 33 plus 120 is 153. So on this one, I'm going to mark in 153 millimeters and then just kind of guesstimate where the rotation is. The rotation actually is not that important. It seems like it would be important, but it really isn't. Your thumb will find it as long as you're, as long as you're in the ballpark. All right, I'm happy with it right there. And then you just repeat the same thing on the other side. So I have the bar now clamped in my machine vise at my drill press. I'm using a piece of old leather belt as a soft jaw so I don't mar the surface of the handlebar. And I will be starting with a center drill, and then I will be proceeding to a 190 thousandths. The machine is currently at 2,670 RPM, but that is relatively arbitrary. Also, wear safety glasses when you're doing this. Don't be stupid. All right, so this is now done. I'm going to unclamp it and test on the cap. I've not deburred this yet. I will do that. Let's see if this fits, or if I'll have to go up one size. I will have to go up one more size, unfortunately. That is not wanting to go on at all. That's fine, though. All right, so I went up one drill size to 13/64ths, and that fits perfectly. It is exactly the same, actually. It's the same fit as the factory one, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to guess that's, 3 or 4 millimeters, maybe 3.5. I'm not going to bother remeasuring it, so I'm going to use the same size on the other side right here, and then we're going to head back to the bike. The next of many steps is to cut off the ends of these grips so that we can fit the handguards. I'm going to use a brand new scalpel for this. This is a number 3 handle with a number 15 blade. This is one of my favorite combinations. And I'm just going to score right along the edge, actually just above the edge of the cross hatching there. All right, not a perfectly straight cut there. You can see I left a little bit of excess, but I can clean and square this up off camera And that'll make it really nice. Just make sure you don't cut yourself with one of these scalpels because they are literally designed to cut flesh. This one is going to be a little bit tougher because it has the throttle tube in it, but I'm going to follow the same process and then cut out the end of the plastic. So we'll skip forward to the plastic part. And here we are with that one cut off. And you can see the plastic throttle tube sticking out here. So there are a couple options. We can either use a 7/8 drill, or you could, some people just use a hacksaw and cut the end of this right off. I'm going to start with a drill, and I'm going to do that off camera just so there's less pressure and I can actually get a straight hole, but you know what drilling a hole looks like, so I don't really need to show you that. Time for a confession. While trying to drill this, right as I broke through, the plastic cracked like this. I should have seen this coming because this is a very brittle plastic, but lesson learned, do not drill these at all. Avoid any drilling. Instead, use a hacksaw and cut clean through. Now, I was actually so precise in my placement here that I cut through the middle of the end of the plastic. So there was some plastic left here, and there was a thin film of plastic left there that I just used the handle of my file to punch out like that. And then I used a half-round needle file just to deburr the edge. And now that's very smooth, and we can move forward with the installation. This is the original one off the bike. You can see it's been greased. I will have to re-grease it. So that's a little disappointing, but a lesson learned from me to you. Never, ever, ever drill these. So now the new handlebar is on. I think it looks really good. It's not completely set perfectly the way that it should be yet. I think it's a little too far to the right. The bike's right in this case. And it might be tilted a little bit too far forward, but I'm going to keep adjusting it as I see fit. The good news is that if I close my eyes, I wouldn't really be able to tell the difference between the stock bar and this bar, which to me is a good thing because I liked the way that the old bar felt. So next is going to be potentially the trickier part, which is the handguards. These are never the easiest to install because every bike is different with how the wires and cables are routed. So we'll try to do one on camera, and then I'll do the other one off camera unless something interesting pops up. All right, I think that works all right. Again, the key thing here is to make sure that the throttle tube is clear. The way that I cut this, the handlebar is actually sub-flush to the end of where I cut this. But because there's enough clearance in the mechanism for the expander clamp inside of here, it does not interfere with this at all, which is really good. You can also see here how these are routed behind the clamp. Now, here's the real downside. You can also see here how the throttle cables go through and underneath and behind the handguard. And the problem here is that to get the handguards in the correct place, you pretty much have to have it right where these cables are. Like, Honda really should have given us way more slack on these cables because there is none from the factory. Just for laughs, I decided to mount this side up with the factory bracket or the factory clamp, this kind. And I'll show you the problem here is that it doesn't clamp flat against that face. It's kind of at this angle. It's only touching at one corner, and that's not good. Where you can see on this one, so on this one you can see it's actually clamping on the entire face. That's better for load distribution. This one is not so great. But here's the caveat. Because these are curved, or have, a curved profile to them, they will wrap around cables and wires a lot better than this straight piece. And while on the other side it works fine, on this side it doesn't. And that's why I decided to try this as well. I saw the problem where the lever is like at the plastic level and not at the metal bar level. But that's mainly because I'm trying to match it to that one, where I could drop both sides down, possibly, if I used both of these. The other problem, though, is that if this, I got lucky with how well this fits up. If you don't get it at just the right angle, it doesn't fit up at all, and it is terrible. So I'm going to try this kind on the other side and see if I can wiggle it through, and then see which one of these two styles is better. I still prefer this style because it gives you more options, but it would be nice if they made one. Sorry, I had to switch back over to the tripod. It'd be nice if they made one of these with a curved profile to it as well, and that would be the best kind you could get. I could make that theoretically, but I don't know how much work I want to put into making a part like this. So here it is complete. I know I kind of jumped a little bit, but I did end up going with the stock Acerbis X-Factor bar clamps because they just happen to work better with the cabling. I do have to eat my words on what I said at the beginning of the other ones fitting better, but I will stand by that the other style with the dual pivot is the better way to get a better connection with more adjustability. It is the superior clamp style. That said, again, the factory ones worked better here, and I was able to get the metal part, the metal frame of the handguards in line with the levers, which is half the point. I think this looks rather good, especially the handlebar. I love the natural aluminum colored handlebar because it matches the frame and other parts of the bike. I wish I could have gotten the red Acerbis X-Factor handguards to match the rest of the bike. That said, red, if it was a red that didn't match the rest of the bike, that would be almost more distracting than these being black and not really being a part of the overall color scheme of the bike. Because all the black on the bike is matte. There is no gloss black on the bike. But they will probably get less glossy and fade over time. So that's pretty much it. I will leave torque specs in the description because honestly I didn't use them for this. I will go back and torque everything later on. But for now, everything is just going to be the way that it is, and that's fine. So you can see here how the factory one's clamped up. I got really lucky because if the way the geometries match up between the handlebar and the handguard and how you have to position this and what angle you have to position this at, if it doesn't all magically work out, it doesn't line up at all. And that's why I spent money on the other clamps, is because they allowed more adjustability. It just so happens that the cabling and wires don't really work well with that style on this particular bike. Another thing I did is the supplied bolts that come with the Acerbis kit are too short in my opinion, and they are not stainless. So I have some M8 slightly longer bolts. These are cap heads instead of button heads. Oh well. These are actually stainless. And then I might swap out the two M6 bolts here for the ones with the Zeta kit, because the ones with the Zeta kit are stainless. I got the bars centered up. Everything is adjusted for the most part just the way that I want. I will have a segment at the end of this where I talk about how the handguards work, how they feel, how the new handlebar feels compared to the stock one, and just do an overall initial impressions sort of review. So again, my microphone failed when trying to record, and yeah, it's getting annoying when this happens, so I'm doing voiceover again. My impressions after driving with the new handguards and handlebar. I'll start with the handguards. they block wind so well, I was amazed. I didn't think they were going to be as effective at blocking wind as they actually are. The day that I was riding was pretty warm at about 35 degrees Fahrenheit, and there was a strong wind from the south, and when I was driving south into the headwind, I could definitely feel the wind being blocked off of my hands, and that means that, or that resulted in my hands never really getting all that cold, even during a 25-minute ride. When before, without the handguards, even after about 15 minutes, my hands would start to get uncomfortably cold. So talking about the handlebar real quick, it feels exactly the same as the stock handlebar. If you swapped them and I closed my eyes, I would never know the difference. And that to me is a good thing, because I really like the way that the factory handlebar felt. It was just in a really good spot for me. And again, it was the CR high bend. So if you have a CRF250L and you need a replacement handlebar or want to replace it, the CR high is the best bet. Other than that, I love the way it looks. I love the natural aluminum. I think it looks and matches the bike a lot better than the slightly off black color of the factory. So until next time, see ya.